Whereas literature circles, we know that if we're just talking, so right now, I'm really trying to be interesting, but you're only going to remember 5% of what I say. So I try and increase that by giving you something that you can read at the same time to 10%. By later on today, I'm going to show you a video of my class, and so that will increase it by 20%. But I want you to move down to 50% or more, and that's where literature circles are working. So in sharing ideas, the cognitive ideas, the reading strategies, if you can be in the bottom part, that's where the learning retention happens, and that's where literature circles always are. Okay, so the next thing is a reading list. And I guess I'm just going to hold this up for the camera right now as well. This is my 2013 version. I guess it's time for me to publish the new version. Just keeps changing every time I get a chance to, a few minutes to update the PETA website. But it lists different books, and you know that the books that are here are not going to get you in trouble with school districts or administrators or parents by inappropriate content or language. You know that I've read them, and any cautionary notes that I might have will be small, or they wouldn't be on this list, and they'll be right on the PETA website. So you can feel confident using these books. So you'll see that there are red, orange, yellow, green levels, and those were because I created this system 20 years ago, long before I knew of anybody else's color coding lists. So I just tried to think of the rainbow. So I would say that the books that have an X and the red column are about the grade 3 level, reading for the average reader, orange about the grade 4, yellow about the grade 5, green grade 6 and up. In my case, is usually grade 6 to 8, because I've never taught beyond grade 7. I have another column that I call important, and that simply means that we can have a kid who's just really hooked on reading Roald Dahl, who is funny, but I don't really think I want a kid to have a steady diet of the only books that they're reading all year are Roald Dahl. I want them to have some books like Breadwinner or things that have more Number the Stars, some more sort of social responsibility content in it, so I can periodically encourage kids to go on to something that I've listed as important. And then there is the F column, which you will certainly change to meet your own expectations. You'll either delete that column or different X's, and those happen to be my personal favorites on this list. So the favorites are ones I've read all the Lemony Snicket series and all the Rick Riordan series, and I actually don't like either one of them. But I read them because my kids are liking them, so I've posted things on it, but you'll notice that they're not X'd off as a favorite. You make your own choices on that one. So if you look at Because of Winn-Dixie 3/4 of the way down the page, you'll see that there's an X right across in every column. So if you're not familiar with that book, it's actually got big font, lots of white spaces behind them. It's between the font. There's not a lot of pages in it, and the vocabulary is not very difficult. Lots of grade 3 kids and most grade 4s can manage it just fine. But there's some complicated, complex issues. Alcoholism, a character has done time in jail and has to decide whether or not to tell other people about it. A mother ran away because of an alcohol problem and the child was living alone with the father. There's some complex issues that if you were dealing with a grade 7 class, you'd be talking more about the issues than you might be when you were doing a more superficial read with a grade 4 class. So some of those books are really important, because some of the characters that we're going to talk about, some of my class students that we're going to talk about who are avid and skilled readers are going to read some very sophisticated books like this one, plus they're going to be put in another book because they have extra time because they're fast readers with some of the lower level reading classmates, and they're going to read Because of Winn-Dixie. How many of you are sort of familiar with the work of Vygotsky? Vygotsky was a peer, a chronological peer of Piaget, but we didn't know about his work until after the Iron Curtain fell. And he said some really great things that I think are so true. One of the things he said is that the thinking is brought up by being exposed to a level of thinking that is pardon?
Is it the ZPD, the zone?
Zone of proximal development, yes, exactly. So by being exposed to a level of thinking that's just above our own, that's where our learning goes up. And so that is one of the reasons you do cooperative group learning and lit circles so much. In a standard class that we used to have where you taught 30 kids, do you think there was any chance that I could hit the zone of proximal development for 30 individual kids? No chance. But in a class where you're using group work of any kind, small group, you as the teacher only have to teach the 6 bright lights. Because their job becomes in the group, they're going to make it easy enough to understand for the rest of their group. And they're going to do it in a way that's much easier and more organic than you can, because they're in a small, intimate setting and they understand the kids' vocabulary and they know how to get the message across. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a kid, a really bright kid like Paul, who reads voraciously, reads basically a book a day. He is going to be part of Because of Winn-Dixie. And part of that group is going to include Chrissy and Jason, who are reading below grade level. They're in grade 5, but they're at the very beginning grade 4 level. Can you imagine the difference of the discussion with asking each other questions of the book, with or without my bright light? Can you see how Jason and Chrissy can learn to think in a more sophisticated way by having to answer Paul's hard questions? Can you can you imagine how they'll model their own questions in a more sophisticated way? So that's why you want to have some books for your lit circles that can hit a broad cross-section of grade levels. So that's why they're X'd out that way.